If you look at Europe, Chinese electric cars are everywhere. Brands like BYD, MG, SAIC, and Chery are not just present. They're a force, with sales growing month after month. You see them on the cobblestone streets of Rome and the autobahns of Germany. But then, if you look at the United States, they're almost invisible. And this isn't the simple story of tariffs or politics you might expect. The real reason is deeper, and it tells us a lot about how markets actually work. Here's the core of the puzzle. So today let's break it down using the numbers. On a technical level, Europe and the United States are buying the same cars. We're talking about the same battery chemistries, the same electric motors, the same modular platforms. The underlying technology is identical, yet Chinese manufacturers are dominating one market while effectively failing in the other. That tells us something incredibly important. Technology alone doesn't win markets. A great product is the entry ticket, not the grand prize. The divergence in outcomes means something structural is happening. It's not about the car, it's about the context. Now let's talk about market size, which is not just a number. In 2024, the United States sold roughly 15 million vehicles. Europe sold somewhere between 12 and 13 million. At first glance, they look similar in scale, but they're not. The US is one market. It has one dominant language, a single federal regulatory system, and a relatively homogeneous consumer culture. Europe, on the other hand, is 27 different markets pretending to be one. Think about it. A car that is approved for sale in Germany still needs its marketing, its pricing, and its incentive strategy completely reworked for Italy, Spain, and France. Every country has its own rules, its own consumer habits, its own language. Achieving scale in Europe is harder, much harder. This isn't just about language. It's about the deep, costly work of localization. Think about the dealership networks, which are built on local relationships. Think about service and repair infrastructure, which must meet different national standards. In the US, you can design one marketing campaign, one service plan, and one distribution strategy for 330 million people. In Europe, you need a dozen different versions to reach the same number of customers. The cost of that complexity is immense. Next, let's look at who is actually buying electric cars. In 2024, EVs made up about 10 to 12% of US vehicle sales. That's roughly 1.7 million cars. But here's the critical number. Out of those 1.7 million, a single company, Tesla, sold around 1.1 million of them. Let that sink in. That means the vast majority of existing EV demand in the United States is already captured. Chinese brands aren't entering an open field where they can create new demand. They're trying to steal it from an incredibly strong, established market leader. And stealing demand is always much harder and much more expensive than creating it. Furthermore, Tesla's dominance is reinforced by its supercharger network. For years, it was a closed ecosystem, a powerful moat that gave customers a seamless, reliable charging experience that competitors couldn't match. While they have recently opened it up, the brand loyalty and convenience factor it built are deeply entrenched. A new entrant isn't just selling a car. They're trying to break into a mature ecosystem where the leader has already solved the biggest pain points for consumers. This leads directly to strategy. Chinese manufacturers often use a playbook of selling cars with very low, sometimes near zero profit margins to rapidly gain market share. This can work, but only when a few key conditions are met. Logistics need to be cheap, sales volume needs to be high, and government incentives need to help. Europe, with its proximity and fragmented market, actually fits that model reasonably well. The US doesn't. Shipping costs across the Atlantic are higher. Establishing a coast-to-coast dealer network is astronomically expensive, and the marketing costs required to build a brand from scratch in the American consciousness are brutal. Without the ability to achieve immediate scale, a low-margin strategy simply collapses under its own weight. Let's put the dealer network into perspective. In the United States, the traditional dealership model is protected by franchise laws in many states, making it illegal for a manufacturer to sell directly to consumers. This means a new brand can't just open a showroom like Tesla did. They have to convince hundreds of independent, often family-owned businesses to invest millions in a new, unproven Chinese brand over established American, Japanese, or German ones. It's a monumental barrier to entry. Then, there's the product itself. The U.S. market loves big cars, SUVs, pickup trucks. The average transaction price for a new vehicle is over $45,000. It's a market that values size, space, and road presence. In contrast, many of the most successful Chinese EVs in Europe are optimized for compact, price-sensitive segments. They are brilliant city cars, perfect for narrow European streets and budget-conscious buyers. But for the wide-open highways of America, not an ideal match. This is a fundamental mismatch. The Chinese auto industry became a powerhouse by perfecting the art of producing high-quality, affordable, and efficient vehicles for its domestic market, a market that looks a lot more like Europe than America. Their expertise is in a category of vehicle that has limited appeal in the U.S. To compete, they would need to design and build entirely new, larger models, which requires years of research, development, and retooling of factories. They can't just ship their existing best sellers. Finally, there is protection by design. The U.S. government didn't outright ban Chinese cars. Instead, it architected the market to make domestic production the easiest, most profitable option. The federal EV tax credit, which can be up to $7,500, only applies if a vehicle is assembled in North America and its battery components are sourced locally from approved countries. This isn't old-school protectionism with a simple tariff. It's modern market architecture, guiding investment and supply chains inward. Let's be even more specific about this market architecture. The Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, contains provisions that explicitly target China. For a car to qualify for the full tax credit, its battery cannot contain any components manufactured by a foreign entity of concern, which is widely understood to mean Chinese companies. This effectively forces automakers to move their entire supply chain out of China if they want to be competitive on price in the U.S. It's a brilliant and ruthless piece of industrial policy. Europe, by contrast, relied more on blanket incentives without building strong internal demand or scale first. So when Chinese EVs arrived with massive volume and low prices, there was no structural buffer to slow them down. This is the fundamental difference in strategy. The U.S. used policy to build a self-reinforcing system, local manufacturing, secure supply chains, and a dominant domestic brand. It created an ecosystem. Europe, meanwhile, used subsidies to simply encourage the purchase of EVs, regardless of where they were made. This created a vacuum that Chinese brands, with their immense manufacturing scale and low costs, were perfectly positioned to fill. The EU is only now starting to consider tariffs, but it's a reactive move, years after the market dynamics have been set. In the end, the United States isn't immune because it's smarter. It's immune because it built domestic demand first, around a strong market leader within a unified and protected market. Europe didn't, and now it's paying the price. Please let me know what you think in the comments section.